Who is the mole? I think I know. Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new video in which I talk to you about who I believe is the FBI mole on Blindspot Season 2. If you're anything like me, you love this show, and I love how Season 2 has started with a freaking bang. Jane is back in the mix, she's angry, she's pissed, and she's with the team who's also angry and pissed, and she's found out so many things in just the first 2 episodes of the season, and I just can't wait to find out more. But something else that we as the audience do know is that Sandstorm, in particular Shepard and Roman, have been discussing the fact that there is an FBI mole. Someone that they can activate when they need to, and who could potentially expose the fact that Jane is actually working against Sandstorm with the FBI, which would be bad in so many ways. So the question is, who's the FBI mole? Thankfully, the show actually gave us a list of suspects through some careful editing, and we're gonna go through them. But I've been also doing my own research and found out a couple of additional tidbits about the mole that are gonna help us narrow it down and discover who that mole can be. Let's talk about the potential suspects first. FBI Director Pellington, Kurt Weller, Patterson, Dr. Robert Borden, Tasha Zapata, Edgar Reade, and finally Nas Kamal. Now, before we start sorting out who we think is the mole amongst this group of fine people, I wanted to highlight an interesting answer that Martin Jarrow gave Entertainment Weekly in a recent interview. And the question was about who the FBI mole could be, and here was his answer. Literally could be anyone. I don't want to sway one way or another. I think everyone's gonna make their decisions. The mole knows that they're the mole. The mole though has to be very careful about when it talks to Sandstorm because everyone is under such close scrutiny. So it's not like the mole and Sandstorm are in constant communication. In fact, when the mole finally does reach out, it's at a moment of crisis where Sandstorm needs to know something. So that I think is super interesting because it's not like the mole is some secret undercover agent that doesn't even know that it's an undercover agent that they can be activated. No. The mole actually knows that they're the mole, they're working on behalf of Sandstorm, but they can't communicate as freely as they would want to. So, knowing all of these facts, who could the mole potentially be? Let's start with those that I don't think are the mole at all. Kurt Weller. It makes no sense for Kurt to be the mole. Everything we've seen of his life so far and the trials and tribulation he's been dealing with make him an unlikely candidate to be a Sandstorm mole. It's as likely as Jane being the mole, so right off the bat, no way it's him. Patterson. Now, Patterson is by far one of the brightest people on that team. And in her life so far, we've been able to see that she's really dedicated to that team, dedicated to helping that team, and has actually lost someone she loved in the process of doing her particular work. So because of that, and because we've seen her have some ups and downs all the way through, it seems unlikely that she would be a great candidate as a mole for Sandstorm because it's not like she's always been helping Sandstorm. She's been just trying to do her job in the best way possible. So I feel that if she was a Sandstorm operative, she would have maybe acted differently. So I'm just gonna dismiss her right off the bat. Edgar Reade, Mr. Straight Arrow, has been always on the straight and narrow path of doing what is right as much as he's able to do. And now with the recent storyline where he's basically studying his own past, trying to find issues of abuse that he potentially has dealt with himself, doesn't seem like the kind of behavior a mole would be engaging in, especially because, you know, we're trying to just accomplish a mission, which is a mission that Sandstorm has established, and it doesn't seem like Reade is doing any of those things. So because of that, I don't think he's the mole. Zapata. I know Zapata is actually a pretty easy mark. You know, she's had her trouble with gambling. She's been blackmailed before by the CIA. So it's not like her record is squeaky clean. But if you think about it, Everything I just told you about her actually makes her a pretty terrible mole for Sandstorm because she's dealt with so many issues. Her being someone who gambles, someone who can be blackmailed, make her a pretty terrible mole, to be honest. I don't think she's that important of an asset that they would put so many resources in trying to protect her. So I'm just gonna say, doesn't seem that Zapata could be the mole. So let's dismiss her right off the bat. We're left with 3 potential likely suspects: Nas Kamal, FBI Director Pellington, and Dr. Robert Borden. I know that Nas seems like a perfect, absolutely straightforward, yep, she's the mole, she's so secretive, she does all this stuff. But let me tell you, I'm gonna dismiss her for the following reasons. I honestly think that Nas, coming from the NSA, has actually displayed a lot of traits and behavior that show me that she would be a terrible mole. Because coming from the NSA, she already had access to a ton of information. And while she would be maybe incentivized to reactivate Jane, it doesn't seem like her actions are actually helping Sandstorm in any way, shape, or form. Actually, if she was doing all this effort to try to bring Jane back into the fold and Sandstorm wouldn't know about that, it kind of feels illogical that she would be the mole. So because it's illogical, and also the fact that she's coming from the NSA, and Shepard and Roman have been very adamant that they keep saying, or FBI mole, FBI mole, I don't think it's likely that she is the mole. Pellington and Borden, who could it be? Now, Pellington is the FBI director. That's a really high post, like an extremely high post. Super political, you get a ton of access. If you have the FBI director in your pocket, it feels to me you wouldn't just not take advantage of that resource. And the fact that Sandstorm hasn't taken advantage of that mole tells me the mole has access but doesn't have a lot of power. So because Pellington has access and power, I'm gonna dismiss him, which leaves us with Dr. Robert Borden as our mole in service. What up? Now I know what you're thinking. He's a psychologist, like how is he the mole? Well, if you think about it, as a psychologist, he has a lot of access to a lot of information because people literally voluntarily sit down and tell them their innermost secrets, their innermost thoughts. And as an operative, that's a fantastic place to be because you know what's happening, but you're not a part of the action, so you don't put yourself in harm's way, but you're a part of the team because you get all this information coming in. Plus, you're seeing him reconnect with Patterson because there's been so much shift and he's been pretty much exiled from a lot of this information. Him getting close to Patterson is the kind of move that a mole would do to try to get as much information, embed themselves even further in the investigation without, again, raising too much suspicion. But the final indication that's telling me that Borden is the mole is an answer that Martin Jarrow gave in that same interview to Entertainment Weekly about what we can expect for Borden this season. Borden has got a ton to do this season. Unfortunately for time, one of his scenes was cut, which is a drag, because he's just one of my favorite performers to watch. He's just so great and natural and very good looking. Some of those sparks that you were feeling between Patterson and Borden last year will maybe take hold with some kindling. Clearly, Borden is gonna have a lot of stuff to do this season, and in my opinion, that action, that activity is gonna come from the fact that he is a Sandstorm operative. But guys, that's my theory. That's who I think is the FBI mole. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Comment below, let me know. If you think it's someone else, I'd be curious to hear who you think it is and why. If you want to hear me talk about TV some more, make sure to subscribe because we cover and review so many cool TV shows. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye.